Let me tell you something. Let me get one thing out of the way. There ain't nothing wrong with clowns. There ain't nothing wrong with clowning, just so long as we're all doing our own clowning, if and when we so choose and we know when we're clowning. It's our clown and we own up to it. A lot of people pay you good money to see the right kind of clowning. I'm a clown myself sometimes. Oftentimes. More oftener than I like to admit at times. You can't tell me we don't got clowns. Why? By their own self-admission. Where? Why, by my own self-admission, as stated above, by my personal observation of the clowning, and by the tacit confessions imparted upon me by many of my contemporaries that they are indeed clowns. You can't tell me we don't got clowns. I have often partaken of the clownhood, whether by my own endeavor or by the conspiracy of my fellow man, who often would seem to rather have had me as a clown. You can't tell me we don't got clowns when we do so bear witness to the conspiracy of our fellow men to make of us as clowns. And any effort at logical analysis will quickly discover that this is a situation which ought not be surprised when it produces clowns. In the final analysis, I say the clowns can be confirmed by their own public testimony, which may not always state explicitly such a phrase as, "I, sir, I come to you as a clown," but which can be discovered by a process of discussion to be the tacit admission of one's own clownhood, and one can draw reference to the criterion of embarrassment to conclude that one would rather be less likely to confess themselves as clowns were it not to be the case. Ain't nothing wrong with some clowning. A certain kind of clowning. Society needs that clowning. They'll pay you good money to see the right kind of clowning. We need that clowning. Talk about some healthy clowning. Tell you about some of the clowning I'm seeing. If I didn't know better, I'd say we're seeing some hired clowns. That's right, I'll tell you something about the clowning I'm seeing. And we got clowns, and you can't tell me we don't got clowns. And now you're showing me some hired clowns. Done seen it too many times. What's a hired clown? Shut up and take the paycheck. You don't like it? Go get another job. You see something that don't make sense? Shut the hell up and do your job. You come to me, you pay me to be your clown, and I do so accept the arrangement so long as that money and those bennies keep rolling in. You can't tell me we don't got hired clowns. And for further elucidation, I refer the listener to the part above wherein the same reasoning can be applied with regards to the existence of hired clowns, as was applied to the existence of clowning in general. Again, people will pay you good money to see that kind of clowning. Nothing wrong with that kind of clowning, insofar as the contractee clown is made aware of the contractual agreement whereby the contractor has agreed to employ the time and body of the contractee, with the understanding that much of the reasoning capacity of said contractee shall not be articulated, and therewith ought not to be utilized, lest the wastage of mental energy should occur, and one has thus reasonably said to have made of one a hired clown. If sometimes only in a limited sense, of course. There are varying degrees to which the clowns may be made to exercise some control in their workplaces. This has been borne witness to in the accomplishments of the labor movement, which would appear in intention, at least, to have aspired to make of men less as clowns. Oh, they'll pay you if they want to see some clowns. So you can't go talking like we don't got hired clowns. Done seen it too many times. You can't tell me we don't got clowns. I'll tell you when I'm seeing clowns. Then we get to such and such a point as we got legal clowns. That is to say, the mechanism of the state has conspired to make it our legal obligation to act as clowns, lest we be imprisoned or otherwise robbed of our liberties. Not so sure about that clowning. Don't go robbing us of our liberties just so you can make of us as clowns. Surely here we encounter a situation in which the foundation of the clowning may be called into question. That is, it would appear that the exclusive beneficiary of the clowning is the state and the legal system, to the exclusive detriment of the clown. As with the two forms of clowning listed above, this further seemingly malignant form of clowning can be confirmed with the same reasoning as above. That is, men and women have often presented themselves to myself as legal clowns. Again, this is not to say that said legal clowns have oft uttered the phrase, "I, sir, I come to you as a legal clown," in so many words, but we can discover by a process of discussion that some degree of tacit admission has often been made as to one's legal clownhood. And one can draw reference again to the criterion of embarrassment to conclude that so many people would be rather less likely to confess themselves as legal clowns were it not the case. It is unfortunate that it should be the case that grown men and women have been made as clowns by the workings of their own institutions. But in the final analysis, it must be understood that these institutions are being operated by democratically elected officials, lest our clowning may be discovered by process of rational analysis to be circular, and perhaps even be put forward against us as evidence of our inherent clownishness by those who would have us be their legal clowns. You can't tell me we don't got legal clowning. Yet, under the operations of democracy, I do not see what rational basis we might claim for protesting against it so long as the elected terms of our representatives remain in place and subject to vote. It is the clowning in the area of morality, and some of the clowning I believe I may be seeing on the part of those institutions that have acted as artificers of man's morality. This is a clowning of a sort I find both malignant and indefensible. I wouldn't know whose clowns we would be if some of our religious institutions should, upon inspection, have been found to contain elements which are corruptive of God's very word as it is presented in their own scriptures. What do you call that kind of clowning? When a man can be discovered to have been manipulated the very words of God as he presents them to his congregations, can be suspected to have lied consciously to his own congregations in exchange for capital, a situation which can only be said to be corrupt and in fact impeachable by the covenant of the very same holy books of the false preachers, if such covenant were made to be exacted. You can try telling me no, but I don't know what I could possibly be seeing if I'm seeing preachers consciously dissemble before their congregations. And yet, even if the false preachers have attempted to make of their congregations the devil's clowns, it is achievable for said congregations to free themselves from the spiritual and indeed the intellectual shackles imposed by those who would make of them the devil's clowns. And so, we have addressed what we have accepted in our culture and in ourselves some aspect of clowning, which seems congruent with our very natures, having given consideration to business relationships, in which one's clowning is contractually obligated, as well as legal relationships, which would, upon inspection, appear to be a sort of collectively self-induced form of clowning under the workings of a democracy, whatever its present malfunctions. We have finally drawn attention to some of the false preachers who have misled their congregations on behalf of capital, and though they would make their congregations the devil's clowns, they can easily be dispensed with through reasonable confrontation with men and women of good moral fiber, courage, and intellectual acuity. So far, when assessing those institutions that would make of men and women clowns, we have at last arrived at scenarios whereby a sufficiently large enough body of persons, having persuaded themselves that the clowning does not befit them, or at least acts to their detriment in many ways, can work together to effect changes that result in less clowning of the destructive variety. Having given due to all the varieties of clowning listed above, that is, the relationship of the clown to the labor economy, to the state, and finally to the false preachers, and having found that they can all be declowned if and wherever proper effort is made, we turn our sights on that variety of clowning, which it would appear no practical effort can be made at the present. That is, the clowning in the area of knowledge, the information clowning. One will be propped up as a clown rather helplessly if one cannot get reliably accurate information by any of the sources in a free press about what's going on around them. You want to talk about some bad clowning? If I can't get reliable data from anywhere about what's happening in the world around me, then surely I must act as somebody else's clown. There's no benefit that I can possibly imagine for myself with this clowning around with information, and must ultimately find terrific fault with the media for apparently making clowns of us all. I can't make that clear enough. If reality itself is something that's going to be completely misconstructed any which way by people, whether to suit themselves or to suit this or that institution, then eventually we shall all be as clowns. With that said, you can't tell me we don't got clowns. Done seen it too many times. Now, I apologize if there were any standard of etiquette whereby I am understood to remain in conformity where there is clowning, but upon inspection, I find that much of the clowning is enforced through the mechanism of humor. That is, we remain as clowns in the understanding that we will be laughed at by our fellow clowns should we transgress from our clownhood. Personally, I find this a rather absurd basis for the enforcement of clownhood, especially in those instances where I find, as I believe I have in the past, that the institution of clownhood is being enforced apathetically and half-assedly by other clowns, and where I find it leading to ends that are destructive. I can't tell you how many clowns there are, but I bet you the projections undershoot it by millions. Millions and millions of clowns. I'll never tell you when they're clowns. We gotta make sure it's not all clowns. If it's all clowns, that's something that can be looked at as well. When you press people for information, they seem to confess they're clowns. And clowns seem to come in all walks of life. Some of them have great influence. Can't have everybody clowning. You can have some of the people clowning all the time, and you can have all the people clowning some of the time. Yes, we can imagine a world where there are only clowns, but I wouldn't know how long you could carry on. I mean, you'd have a situation like Idiocracy, or otherwise the AI would have to take over and turn the clowns into slaves. As a representative of humanity, I should like to see that the clowning should not reach such lengths. On the one hand, as a representative of pragmatism, I should not expect overnight to turn the tide of clowning back to large-scale rational and ethical human behaviors, and yet daily we witness data which may point to the unfolding of large-scale catastrophic events in the present or near future, and we cannot help but see the clowning and wonder if the very potentiality for these events to transpire is made real by the clowning. If you were clowns, why weren't you juggling? If I'd have seen you juggling, I might have had a basis to say these are clowns. Don't see no juggling, see a lot of shot calling, seeing what I thought was clowning, and now I know it's clowning. Stop that clowning! I said stop that clowning! Can't have that clowning no more! Stop that clowning! Now show me that clowning! Wind up in the dunk tank sooner rather than later with that clowning. Find out all this time you were clowning. Find out all this time you were better suited to be handing out balloons, and here you were getting into high positions in industry and office of government, and you were clowns. Now you better go and stop that clowning. Can't keep having that kind of clowning. That's no good clowning. I said that's no good clowning. We got another situation. Some of these clowns are still running around thinking they're going to change the world. Upon inspection, the propensity of said clowns to continue this variation of clowning would appear to be dependent upon their ability to retain their occupations, their mortgages, and their relationship to various lending institutions. Stop that clowning! Can't go having no I'm going to change the world kind of clowning. You want to hear my present theory of social hierarchy? Here goes. We got clowns and ooh, we got some clowns. We got clowns and we got them in droves. And stand up now and be counted such that thee may be known as clowns. We got clowns. We got clowns. We got clowns. And then directly above them we got two factions. We got gangsters and we got riddlers. We got gangsters and we got riddlers. And yet ever he stands before me as a clown who is propped up and made to do tricks by some other entity. And surely as we see the gangsters and the riddlers, surely as we look up and we see them, those clowns look up and they see wizards. Ooh, we got wizards, folks. Ooh, we got some wizards. We got people running around making something out of nothing. Ooh, we got wizards. We got magicians, for crying out loud. Magi, sorcerers, fantabulous. We got people waving magic wands and making assets. Ooh, we got some real wizards. Don't tell those clowns. Don't nobody talk to those clowns. None for the clowns. Said none for the clowns.